So Marvel just set a new streaming record, but probably not the kind they wanted to set. A recent analysis says this isn't just a one-off flop, but a huge red flag for the entire studio. So today, we're going to dig into that argument and see what it could mean for the future of superhero movies as we know them. And really, it all comes down to this one massive question. Is the Marvel Universe, one of the biggest entertainment franchises ever, fundamentally broken? That's the core idea we're going to explore, looking right through the lens of this new commentary. So how does this analysis even make that claim? Well, it all kicks off with the streaming numbers for Fantastic Four: First Steps, and then it uses that as a launchpad to critique Marvel's entire game plan. Let's break it down. All right, so here's our roadmap. We'll start with that record-breakingly bad debut, then dive into what the commentary is calling the Pedro Pascal problem. From there, we'll zoom out to the idea of a bigger MCU collapse, look at what genre is supposedly taking over, and finally, what Disney's last-ditch effort might be. Okay, first up, let's talk about the event that started this whole conversation. After a pretty quiet run in theaters, everybody was watching to see how Fantastic Four: First Steps would do on Disney+. And the results? Well, they weren't just surprising. They were historic. And for all the wrong reasons. The number at the center of all this is 4.9 million. That's how many views the movie apparently pulled in during its first 5 days. Now, you might be thinking, hey, that sounds like a lot of people. And you're right. But in the Marvel Universe, context is absolutely everything. And yeah, that context is pretty brutal. This analysis makes it clear that 4.9 million isn't just a little low. It's the worst streaming debut for any MCU movie. Ever. I mean, think about that. It's a totally new low for the studio. And just look at this. On the Nielsen streaming charts for its big debut week, it barely even squeaked into the top 10, landing way down at number 10. It was getting beaten by shows that had been out for a while. That signature Marvel buzz just wasn't there. So the commentary doesn't just stop at the what, it really tries to get to the why. And it points the finger at one specific factor it believes is the main reason for this historic flameout. And that factor is the movie's star, Pedro Pascal. The commentary is super blunt about it, basically saying that this idea that he's a massive star who can open a movie just didn't hold up here. It calls his casting a major misstep for the whole franchise. And it doesn't stop with Marvel. The analysis basically says this should be a huge red flag for any other big franchise relying on him, specifically calling out his upcoming role in the Star Wars universe and asking if it could run into the exact same problem. Okay, so this is where the argument really zooms out. The analysis frames this one film's failure not as some isolated incident, but as a key symptom of a much deeper, more systemic problem brewing inside the entire Marvel machine. The commentary lays out a bunch of symptoms of what it calls a Star Wars-level collapse. Things like a growing disconnect with the fans who built the MCU in the first place, criticism of a focus on what it calls a female-centered FI-verse, FI standing for female inclusion, the original big stars leaving, and the fact that these movies just aren't the can't-miss cultural events they used to be. And maybe most importantly, that Marvel just can't seem to get its next big thing, like the X-Men, off the ground. And all of this evidence leads the commentary to this single, really bold declaration. The era of the superhero movie is over. It's a huge statement that says, hey, this isn't just a Marvel problem anymore. This is a fundamental shift in what people want to watch. All right, so if the superhero era is on its way out, what's next? Well, the analysis immediately pivots to what it thinks is already rising up to take its place on the throne. And it paints a really clear picture of a changing of the guard. Over here, you've got superhero movies, and the audience is getting tired. They're feeling fatigued. But over here, you have video game movies, like the huge hits we've seen from Mario and Sonic, and the audience is fired up. This, the commentary says, is the new battleground. And this, right here, is what the analysis points to as a massive strategic problem for Disney. Just look at who owns the keys to the kingdom for the next wave of blockbusters. Universal's got Mario, Paramount has Sonic, Sony just landed Zelda, and then you look at Disney's row. Blank. According to this take, Disney has no major cards to play in this rising new genre. So, your cinematic universe is in trouble, and you're behind the curve on the next big genre. What do? Well, what does this commentary suggest is the only path left for Disney and Marvel? The analysis argues that Marvel really only has one big red escape button left to push, the reboot button. The idea is that a giant crossover movie on the horizon could be their chance to just wipe the slate clean, erase all the confusing storylines, and let the studios start completely fresh with a new MCU. So this all gets broken down into what the commentary calls a desperate playbook. Step 1, just admit that what you're doing right now isn't working. Step 2, go for a guaranteed win by leaning hard into nostalgia with an X-Men movie that looks and feels just like the beloved 90s cartoon. And the final play, step 3, hit that big reboot button with a massive crossover and start all over. And that leaves us with the final crucial question that this whole analysis is built around. The clock is ticking, audience attention is shifting fast. From this perspective, Marvel is in a desperate race against time. The question isn't really if they'll try to reboot, it's can they actually pull it off before their audience just moves on for good?